Video games are internet enabled, and people talk to each other while they're playing the game to coordinate their actions. Washing machines. There's an internet-enabled washing machine made by IBM and Miele, and you put your clothes in the washing machine, and then you go and have a beer, and it sends an SMS to tell you your washing is done. Very popular among students. Imagine refrigerators on the net. They have this nice liquid crystal display that's touch sensitive. And in the United States, family communication is done by paper and magnets on the front of the refrigerator. But now you can add email and blogging and web pages to the family communication system. And then I got to thinking that if we could get RFID chips in the packages of things that we put into the refrigerator and put an RFID sensor inside the refrigerator, it would know what it has inside of it. So while we're at work, it's surfing the net looking for recipes that it could make with what it has inside, and when you get home, you can see a list of recipes for dinner. Well, you could extend this a little bit. You can imagine being on vacation and getting an email. It's from your refrigerator. It doesn't know how much milk is left, but it knows you put it in 3 weeks ago, and it's going to crawl out on its own if you don't do something about it. Now, I'm sorry to tell you that the Japanese have done a bad thing. The Japanese have invented an internet-enabled bathroom scale. When you step on the scale, it figures out which family member you are, and it sends that information to the doctor to become part of your medical record. That's okay, really. On the other hand, the refrigerator is on the same network. So when you come home, you see diet recipes coming up on the display, or maybe it just refuses to open. Well, I don't have time to tell you about some of these other very interesting potential developments, but I did want to mention one, the universal remote. If you're like me, you have a whole lot of electronic equipment at home for entertainment. And almost every single box you have has its own infrared remote control. So the first problem you have is figuring out which remote goes with which box. And after you figure that out, that's the remote with the dead battery. So I have a proposition. Let's internet enable all of this stuff. Let's internet enable our mobiles. And now the way we interact with those devices is through the net. Now this is nice because you don't even have to be in the same room to interact with them. You don't even have to be in the house. You could be anywhere in the world and interact with these pieces of equipment through the internet. Of course, so could everyone else. So now suddenly the notion of strong authentication and the ability to encrypt traffic is important because A, you don't want someone else reprogramming your entertainment system, and B, you probably want some privacy when it comes to what it is that you're downloading into those systems. So I'm predicting that the mobile will eventually become the method by which we control all of these devices, and will do so in a secure way through the network. Just quickly recapping, the users are now in charge. If you had any idea that it was different than that, forget it. Today, it's all about users. It used to be that if you were an advertiser, you told the users what you wanted to say, and they didn't have any choice. You were the television programming team, and you told the users that the show was going to be at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. You told the users that the radio program would be on at a certain time. Today, it's all over. The users are in charge. They download the music or the whatever else they want to hear into their iPods. They listen to it whenever they want to. They time shift everything by downloading to TiVo or personal video recorders. They decide which advertisements to look at because they decide to click on them or not in the online environment. People expect service 24 hours a day. If you think you have a business that goes from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, guess again, because your customers are up at all hours. In fact, some of them are around the world in perfectly reasonable time zones, just not yours. So FedEx, for example, will tell you at any hour when they last saw the package you're looking for. I'm careful to say when they last saw it. They don't know where it is, but they know where they last saw it. And that's important to you to know that somebody saw it somewhere while it's on its way. So you're seeing a lot of this user control. You're also seeing a lot of community kinds of formation in the online environment with MySpace and Facebook and Orkut and so on. And the games like World of Warcraft and Second Life, we're creating communities of interest. A community of interest is a potential advertising target. So, of course, Google has an interest in that, but so should you. They are potential places to market products and services. I've even seen ads popping up on billboards inside the virtual game space. So there are people who are now specializing in putting advertising up inside these virtual games. You can't get away from it. I'm going to skip over this stuff. I'm going to just make one last point, and that is that when you hear people say that knowledge is power or information is power, they only got it half right. It's the sharing of the information that's powerful. You can see this in the scientific world when scientists create common databases like the Human Genome Database, which has accelerated our ability to understand what we know of a given genetic sequence. You can just query the database and say, who knows anything about that particular sequence? The same is true for space physics and for almost all other branches of science. I would guess that if you threatened to take a scientist's access to the internet away, that you would be in mortal danger, because this is how people work today. It's how they share and discover information. Their preprints go over the net before they get anywhere else in the publishing medium. So this open access that the internet offers to all of the world's information is really an amazing gift. And it's something that we should all take advantage of. And I can tell you that Google itself is very committed to realizing this potential that everyone has access to all the world's information. Now, I have to ask whether there is time for a brief status report on the interplanetary extension of the internet. First of all, this is not a Google project. I don't want you to walk out of the room and call the newspaper and say, Google's business plan is to take over the solar system. It isn't. This is a project that I've been working on with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. We've instrumented planet Earth pretty well. Satellites, sensors on the ocean and under the water, and so on. We're very interested in what's going on Mars and what has gone on in Mars and what could go on in Mars. Particularly, is there water? Which the answer is definitely yes now. And is there life on the planet? Well, that we haven't found yet. Now, we've been communicating with spacecraft that are flying past the planets or are in orbit or flying past the asteroids using something called the Deep Space Network. This is one of the 70-meter dishes. There's one in Madrid, Spain, another in Canberra, Australia, and the third one in Goldstone, California. And they talk to spacecraft like this one in order to gather the data back and to control the sensor systems that are on board these various spacecraft. They even have spacecraft that land on the surface, like the little Pathfinder in 1997 on Mars, and more recently, the rovers, which have been in operation now since 2004. Now, I have to tell you that the original plan was for these things to be in operation for 3 months. They've been in operation for 3 years. And there's a reason for that. This is what they look like in the more detailed sense. Those things that look like black wings that are solar panels. And it was the expectation of the designers that over time on the surface of Mars, the panel would become more and more dusty, and its ability to convert sunlight into electricity would diminish. And after a while, after a long Martian night, it might not wake up because the battery wasn't fully recharged. Well, in fact, the solar panels have been kept cleaner than we anticipated. Now, just between us, I think there's somebody up there dusting them off.